All right, let's jump right in. We're going to focus on just one single number today. But this isn't just any number. It might be the most important and, frankly, the most alarming signal for where the U.S. economy is headed. And you can forget the official reports for a minute because this is all about what people actually feel is coming. And here it is, 71%. Now, on the surface, okay, it's just a number from a survey. But as we're about to see, this specific percentage, well, it might as well be a giant flashing red light warning us about what's coming. The big question is, what on earth does it represent? Okay, so here's the reveal. That 71%, that's the share of American consumers in the University of Michigan survey who think that unemployment is actually going to get worse over the next year. You can think of it as a kind of psychological barometer for the economy, a measure of our collective anxiety. And right now, that barometer is pointing straight at a storm. So you might be thinking, okay, but why should we care what people think is going to happen? It's just a feeling, right? Well, here's why. Because when you look back at history, this number has been a shockingly reliable crystal ball. Seriously, let's take a look at its track record. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. You know the official unemployment numbers the government releases? That's like looking in your car's rearview mirror. It tells you where you've been. It's a lagging indicator. But this number? This is a leading indicator. It's like looking out the front windshield. It's telling us where we're probably going because it's based on the very psychology that drives people's spending decisions. I mean, just look at this timeline. The historical pattern is pretty much impossible to argue with. Early 80s, the number spikes, and a double-dip recession follows. 2008, it spikes again, and boom, the great financial crisis. 2020, same thing, a sharp recession right after. Every single time this level of fear spikes, a recession is right around the corner. And now, it's spiked again to 71%. That leaves a massive question mark hanging over the near future, doesn't it? And this is really the key takeaway. This kind of widespread fear, it's not just some passive statistic sitting on a chart, no way. It's an active ingredient in the economy. It's the literal trigger that causes millions and millions of people to change how they act, to tighten their belts, and start bracing for impact. Okay, so that brings us right up to the present day. What makes this 71% reading today so uniquely dangerous? Well, it's not just about the number itself. It's about the story behind the number. And it's a story of deep, deep distrust and some pretty baked-in pessimism. You see, we've got two completely competing stories playing out right now. On one hand, you've got the official narrative from policymakers, right? They're talking about a soft landing and how everything's under control. But then you have the consumer's reality. Everyday people aren't seeing things like interest rate cuts as a victory. They're seeing it as a sign of desperation, an admission that, hey, something is really, really wrong under the hood. And we need to be clear. This isn't just a sudden panic attack caused by one single event. Nope. This is something much deeper. It's a structural pessimism that's been slowly building and building for a while now, thanks to a whole bunch of different pressures. So what's feeding this pessimism? Well, first off, people have been getting hammered for years by high inflation that's just been eating away at their savings. Then they're bracing for the delayed fallout from all those aggressive interest rate hikes. And as if that wasn't enough, there's this brand new layer of anxiety about jobs being lost to AI. It's kind of the perfect storm of worries. So let's trace how this works, how an abstract feeling like fear turns into a concrete, real-world economic problem. This is exactly how psychology creates a self-fulfilling prophecy that can, quite literally, freeze spending in its tracks. Just think about it for a second. Put yourself in these shoes. What happens when more than 2/3 of the country is genuinely afraid of losing their job? What do you personally do when you start getting worried about your paycheck? The answer is simple. And when millions of people have the same answer, the consequences are enormous. It happens in a pretty predictable cascade. First, all the big ticket purchases get frozen. No new car, maybe hold off on that new fridge. Then, step 2, people start saving like crazy, just building up that just-in-case fund. After that, spending on services, things like going out to eat, vacations, it all drops off. And when almost everyone does this at the exact same time, well, that's when aggregate demand just falls off a cliff. And this is where you get that dangerous, vicious cycle. The fear of layoffs makes people spend less. When people spend less, businesses don't make as much money. So what do they have to do? They lay people off. And just like that, the original fear becomes the reality. It's a powerful, self-reinforcing downward spiral.
So, what does all this mean for the road ahead? Let's wrap this up by looking at what these warning signs are really telling us about the outlook for 2026.
Look, when you see a number this high, it's not just a polite suggestion. It's pretty much a guarantee of a few things. First, a sharp drop in discretionary spending is coming. That, in turn, is going to create a major demand shock for businesses. And altogether, this signal is perfectly consistent with the start of a pretty severe economic downturn. This quote really just sums it all up, doesn't it? The American consumer is already retreating. They're preparing for tough times. And that action, by itself, is what makes a significant downturn in 2026 not just a possibility, but a very high probability. So here's where we're left. The warning has been issued loud and clear. That 71% figure is basically the economy's fire alarm, and it is blaring right now. At this point, the only real question left isn't if a downturn is coming, but how deep it's going to be.